My name is Mohammed Agrabawi. I am the Corporate Affairs Director for ANS. It is my great pleasure to be hosting. Usually I am on the side where I do most of the talking. Today it's a bit different. I'm very honored to be hosting three mindsets that talks legal, regulations, also registration, and research and science and registration from outside of this region. So, in a nutshell, this industry has been under attack for some time, maybe because it's new and maybe because of the misinformation that is happening there. At the same time, it is very important to note that there has been some products and players that has not been fully compliant and that made part of this industry does not look good. At the same time, it has been the responsibility for regulators and the industry as a whole to make sure that this industry brings up the benefits of alternative nicotine delivery solution in an attempt to end smoking, but at the same time deal with the collaterals that comes with it. Part of that might be youth vaping, part of that might be the products compliance and regulations, testing, and making sure that these products are child resistant, tested, and compliant with local rules and regulations. Starting 2018, we found out that countries in the Middle East are bringing in more regulations, more testing facilities, more notified bodies to make sure that the products that is coming in their respective countries are compliant with the regulations. I could say, coming from the industry myself, that these products and these regulations are still far away from perfect, and I think that it's only fair because of the that this industry is fairly new. So I would like to introduce the panelists with me today, and I'll give you the chance to introduce yourselves, your work, the organizations you're coming from, and maybe you give us an overall about your thoughts about the session topic, which is product compliance and regulation. So I'll start from ladies first. I'll start from Patricia. I'll give you the floor, and then Dr. Hamid, and then Naveed.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for inviting me. This is an outstanding event, and I can only commend the organizers for accomplishing this for the second, I think, year in a row. My name is Patricia Kovacevic. I am a General Counsel, Chief Compliance Officer, and Regulatory Expert. Currently, I work with a company called Crymas Technologies, Inc., out of the United States. But I also consult with my own consulting firm, Regulation Strategy, on all aspects of regulation of nicotine worldwide. My experience is primarily in the nicotine industry since about 2004, in various senior legal and regulatory roles with companies such as Philip Morris International, Laurel Arden Blue. And the focus of today's panel with the distinguished speakers, in fact, is truly not only the vaping industry, but the reduced risk products in the nicotine risk continuum.
Yeah, my name is Hamid Jamal. I am the founder of a testing lab named HITS, ISO 17025 accredited, and also the certification body RACS, which is the notified body #1 in UAE. We are participating in this event to make it more awareness about the vape and the vape industry and the regulatory matters around it, and all the conflicting ideas that affecting human safety, and as Mr. Muhammad was saying, child safety, the future of population, etc. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. Great to be here. My name is Naveed Chowdhury. I'm the Chief Scientific and Regulatory Officer at Broughton, based in the UK. We offer compliance, consultancy, and testing services to the nicotine and pharmaceutical industries. Personally, I've been in the nicotine industry now for coming up to 17 years after a 4-year stint in the pharmaceutical industry in Germany. I've worked on reduced risk products at BAT for 4 years, at PMI for almost 9 years, and at Imperial Brands for 2 years. And what I've seen really over the last sort of 17 years is obviously a real evolution in terms of the desire to get alternative products onto the market, to get smokers to quit. But I've also seen some things that are a little bit worrying that I think from a regulatory and public health perspective we need to address immediately if the industry is going to thrive and survive.
Thank you. So I would like to start with Naveed, because coming from an area where you're working in both in Europe and in the US, which is an interesting area for me personally, and I think a lot of people wants to know, what are the major differences when it comes to product registration, especially when we talk about the US PMTAs and the EU registration? What is your views about the main differences that you see there?
Well, the main differences are essentially that it's much easier to get a product registered in Europe than it is in the US. In Europe, essentially there is in most countries in the EU, there is a notification process whereby you have to self-certify that you are meeting the standards that are set out in the TPD. In the US, all products that go onto the market have to be approved by the FDA before they're allowed onto the market. And for a PMTA, you need a plethora of data ranging from understanding how it's manufactured to the aerosol chemistry, through toxicology, preclinical and clinical studies, and importantly, that's becoming more and more important in the US, behavioral studies to demonstrate that your product is not attractive to youth. So certainly the registration process in the EU is much easier than it is in the US. However, the big limitation of the EU is that you have a nicotine strength cap at 20 mg per mil, which you don't have in the US. And what we found anecdotally and also from a lot of the published literature is the fact that for a lot of heavy smokers, a pack a day and above, 20 mg per mil for an e-cigarette is not enough to allow them to fully switch to these alternative products. And so that is a little bit of an issue in the EU, but you know, the UK have a solution for that, but the rest of the EU currently do not.
Thank you. Patricia, the legal part is very important in putting the procedures in place. How do you assess having the legal frameworks in the US and in the EU with such a process of registration? How does it come in handy, and how do you assess the prevalence of the legal framework to protect and bring in the best products first, and then protect the youth and protect the minors from vaping and using nicotine products?
Certainly having an extremely strict and cumbersome pre-market authorization process, such as in the United States, unfortunately doesn't do much to prevent youth vaping. This is a reality. Or, that, for that matter, doesn't prevent illicit trade in general. It really imposes a very high cost of market entry on the responsible manufacturers. The fact that the pre-market tobacco application, in my estimate, in order to be fully, complete. I mean, of course, opinions differ, but I think it's in the tens of millions of dollars in terms of cost, which, of course, only the largest and most sophisticated companies can sustain. However, that has demonstrated that just because only a few products are authorized by the Food and Drug Administration under this very strict regulatory framework, it does absolutely nothing to prevent youth vaping. Youth vaping is a matter of education, of educating the retailers, of having a responsible industry, and frankly has nothing to do with the regulatory framework. In the EU, conversely, we sort of see a similar situation, but I do believe, in particular in some countries in the EU, that enforcement is a little bit stricter in terms of point of sale presence of illicit product. And I also do believe that there is a little bit more emphasis, I think, on licensing of retailers in Europe, which in fact leads to, again, further perhaps limitations in terms of product access. I don't think any country got it entirely right in terms of regulation of nicotine products. I think there is a balance, there has to be a balance stricken between protection of public health through ensuring that certain ingredients are not present in the product, through ensuring that the manufacturers are held responsible for placing products on the market that may be harmful to health. However, at the same time, too high of a barrier to entry only benefits truly the illicit trade or the very large companies. So I think no country at this point has truly stricken the right balance, in my personal opinion. I do believe that as more countries start to look at alternative products such as nicotine pouches or vaping products, they should also basically call the experts and work with the industry to create a legislative framework that is, again, well balanced and accomplishes the goal, which is our common goal, which is improving the public health and improving the health of smokers and moving smokers away from combustible products.
Thank you. Dr. Hamid, I want to touch base with you, and maybe you explain to the audience and to us as well what entails registering a tobacco product or a nicotine product in the EU, in the UAE as an example. So just from a technical point of view, how much does it take from time? What kind of tests are requested? Just to maybe we can be comparing apple to apple, because this will lead me to the next question, and this is basically relevant to the Middle East. But because you're the expert here, I want to hear from you about the process itself.
Okay. In UAE, the vape is registered with Ministry of Advanced Technology, MOYAT, and it's done through notification system. We are a notified body called REX, and we are supporting manufacturers or importers to register e-vapes. So the process, as vape is a combined product, by combined I mean it covers two scopes, electrical and chemical. So the process to register products starts with registering the electrical unit, which require a CBTR test, conformity body testing report, and ROHS, which is rate of hazardous substances. So two test reporting, and on the chemical side, we have to submit a report, product description. So it's like product registration and label registration. So the label registration means we make sure that the products are complying with what they are claiming. And the product certification depends on the chemical test of product, like e-liquid or other flavoring or whatever. The process starts first year with minimum components of testing on the chemical side. We are talking about nicotine, taurine, caffeine, etc. On the renewal, after 1 year, then we have to give more detailed testing, which cover microbiological, hydrocarbons that trigger cancerogenic, etc. And still, as a reflection of the whole world, the government in UAE, the regulatory body, is doing their best to make sure that the vape business is safe. And to do that, they are putting a lot of regulations, which is reflected from international practices, whether in UAE or in the US. Actually, they are going extra step by even investing in R&D, by partnering with private labs. We are partnering with the governments to do a lot of studies based on the safety of our products. So the vape business is a new business, and the science needs to be involved more, need to be investing more. So going back to registration, the process takes 7 to 9 business days. You will get 4 certificates to register a vape product, full product, electrical plus chemical. To register only the liquid, you get two certificates, which is for the product and for the label. So, and beside the testing reports, we need to have some declarations, which talk about not using of forbidden products, safety of products, the origin of flavoring, etc. This is in a summary.
Naveed was surprised when he heard 7 to 9 days.
Yeah, I was very surprised when I heard 7 to 9 days, considering it takes, in Europe it takes 6 months for notification, and in the US it takes infinity, right?
Let me interfere here. We are talking if we have full documentation ready.
Right.
So the process to issue.
Right.
Yeah.
But still, I mean, it's still very quick.
Yeah.
I want to agree and disagree with something that Patricia said, if I may. I think Patricia said, talked about the PMTA being a very arduous process. It is a very arduous process. Does it promote illicit trade? Yes, it does. Actually, it does. Does it help youth vaping? Well, not at the moment. I think the situation that we've got in the US is because of the historical way in which the PMTA developed, in that there were thousands of products on the market before the PMTA process kicked in, and there was a deeming date that allowed these products to stay on the market until a PMTA was filed. And there's a massive backlog in the assessment of those PMTAs, means that I think FDA haven't got to their endpoint yet in terms of having a market that's basically cleansed of those products that youth find attractive, and a marketplace where there's only PMTA approved products. I think that will come. That's taking a very long time to come. It's probably come in 10, 15, 20 years' time, but we will eventually get there. But I think it's just a matter of time. I also think, with regards to there is no perfect model in the world, I agree, there is no perfect model in the world that the Middle East could adopt. However, I would wave the UK flag here, because I think the UK have got it quite close to where it needs to be. They adapted the European TPD after Brexit, whereby there's a 20 mg per mil limit on products that can be launched with just a notification. However, if you want to go above 20 mg per mil, there is a medicinal route that the MHRA have now opened, which is akin to a PMTA. So essentially what the UK government is saying is, if you want to put a product in the market that's less than 20 mgs, it's an easy process. It's not going to take 9 to 10 days. It's going to take 6 months, but it's good. But if you want to put a product on the market that has the potential for increased abuse liability and increased addiction, we set up a PMTA-like process, which is the medicinal process in the US, which is a medicinal process in the UK, allowing the product to come onto the market, sold in a controlled environment where age verification infrastructure is already there.
Okay, so I'm gonna disagree with you. I know I'm the moderator, but I don't have to opinionate. But I'm gonna put it in a form of question about the UK regulation. Don't you think that maybe parts of the regulation adopted by the TPD, it's a bold statement, I know, has been strict enough to prevent the entrance of viable products? So the nicotine cap and the liquid cap. So for me, I still need to understand more, how can it be a health benefit or a tax benefit or a youth prevention benefit if you cap the liquid, as long as there is a need and availability of illicit products in the market? So what was the process of understanding of capping the 2 milliliters of liquid or the 20 milligram of nicotine, of course with control measures? I'm not saying that this should be open. But could you shed light, or Patricia, or anybody, if anybody wants to, just shed light, how can you see that this is helping out in preserving the public health?
I said it was almost perfect, not perfect. I think, and you're right. I mean, where does the volume limit come from? Why is that volume limit set? We heard yesterday from the sustainability panel session that actually that low volume of e-liquid actually perpetuates the sustainability and pollution issue of disposable products. It doesn't make sense. I think the 20 mg per mil limit does make sense. I think what kids are looking for when they use one of these products is that very quick nicotine rush, which you get with products that are above 20 mg per mil. You don't get it so much with 20 mg per mil. However, I'm not going to hide from the fact that the UK now are facing a youth issue that the US faced 3 years ago, where you've got 12 and 13-year-olds, using these products, which is just not right. So I think the details of the regulation is not perfect. I think the notion of having a two-tiered system for some products, allowing some products to get to market quicker than higher strength, higher abuse liability products makes sense.
If I may add, completely agreeing with what was said, and I'd like to add just that enforcement is the responsibility of the governments. The industry cannot self-police itself as if, you know, they don't have enforcement authorities. So we're talking to some extent two different things. We're talking illicit product, meaning product that has not undergone any kind of scrutiny by the authorities that is present in the market, whether in small or large quantities. And we're talking also retailers that are handling and passing on those products with very lax age verification limits. And therefore, that part is entirely the responsibility of the government, and governments should simply allocate more resources. With respect to the industry also has to adhere to a code of conduct and to self-police itself within the industry by blacklisting, if you wish, those companies that advertise in an irresponsible manner or in a manner that's violative, even if their products are approved, but their behavior in the marketplace is not compliant. And for sure, both government and manufacturers have to work together, obviously with respect to trademark and patent infringements, where there is an overlap between the two. But the reality, one needs more resources for enforcement. And last thing, of course, education. Education is very important. Education of parents, education of educators, education of retailers as to why they exactly shouldn't be selling to kids. And fear-mongering is not necessarily the best educational tool. Sometimes it accomplishes the exact opposite effect. There should be education regarding not only health issues, but most importantly, what it does to a society as a whole to have laws that are not being upheld. It is not good for society, whether it's a vaping age limit or any other law. Once you have a law that's not being enforced, many other things can fall through the cracks, and that creates a whole level of confusion where, in fact, who gets punished is actually the compliant actors.
I want to highlight a very big theme, which is identity. Till now, we don't know what vape is considered. Is it a medicine? Is it a medical device? Is it a refreshment tool? Is it a tobacco? So, a big question here. And based on this big question, we can go back to your question, what the size can affect. If it's a pharmaceutical product, then 2 milliliter should be less, actually, because it should be more regulated. So I think the most important thing at this stage is science. We need to have science. We need to invest more in R&D labs to identify exactly the limits of safety of vape. Is it a replacement of nicotine treatment addiction? Is it only ENDS, electronic nicotine delivery system? Or is it more? So we have really an identity issue here. And based on the good companies, for example, committed companies which are investing in manufacturing of good products, good digital products, which are sure that the same dosage is released, which are sure of their social responsibility, of their safety testing, of their child caps, etc., etc. After we get an ideal standard for releasing nicotine for public, then we can identify exactly the size. So this is what I'm saying, why PMTAs keep changing, why regulations keep changing, because we don't have science. We don't have a clear idea what's going on. Every day we have new updates. We don't know what is the heating of e-liquids will lead to. Is it cancerogenic products? So again, I stress out, we need identity for vaping. What is it exactly for? Is it for refreshment? Is it for treatment? Is it a mix? So is it a medical device? Is it just for fun? So based on this identity, we will have a standard, and based on this standard, we will be able to lead how the market going to happen. Thank you very much.
That's an interesting analogy. The first time I hear this, this kind of framing the issue itself. But maybe also, I refer to Patricia, that we need education. But I'm always against what the direction of regulators. So maybe we need also to educate the regulator to make them understand that these products are vital to save millions of lives, and they might not be perfect. They're not perfect at the moment. But we cannot wait for 30 years to come and say, you know what, we had a chance. Because today the world is spending around $1.5 trillion on smoking-related diseases, and around 8 million lives are lost annually. So if we have a chance, then we have to grab it. I have to get back to Dr. Hamid. You said that we need more and more R&D.
Yes.
And this is in the Middle East, maybe, it's only framed into the notified body shape. But the scientific research that aims to go beyond regulation and provide scientific data like clinical trials, biomarkers of exposure, and where do we move as public health interest to move there? Do you see on the foreseen future that the Middle East is going through having at least third parties that is willing and to be commissioned by the government to do research and not do work to regulate products, but more into providing substantiated science on providing results, real results? And then I'll come to Patricia and Naveed to hear what do you think about that in Europe, Eastern Europe, and in the US?
What is impressive in the Middle East is that we have really world standards labs and notification bodies. Actually, even all the global players are targeting the Middle East, whether I'm talking about UAE or Saudi, because it's the future of any successful business. Back to the identity, why you are asking me, if you talk about clinical studies, usually clinical studies are not toxicology studies. They are related to medicines or medical devices. When you are talking about toxicology studies, you are talking about safety. So governments in these countries care about their people, and they want them to be safe. Okay, they are supporting initiatives from private companies. I believe it is the responsibility of manufacturers and retailers to identify what is their identity. So where I want to position myself, the manufacturers should know I am a tobacco product, or I am a nicotine product, or I am a medical device. So based on this, the R&D will be led, and the government will be dealing accordingly. What governments want is, away from taxes, etc., and incomes, they want the safety of their people. And the safety happens by securing that the products are compliant with safe standards, labelings, etc. So the R&D part go towards private companies' responsibility and where they want to be. This is my opinion. Thank you.
Anybody care to comment on the idea?
Sure. So in the United States, the government, and in particular the Food and Drug Administration, the Center for Disease Control, and the National Institutes of Health commission annual or periodic reports, very large-scale reports, whether they're youth smoking surveys or reports or surveys on youth use of drugs or population health level surveys for many years already. In fact, most of those are conducted by universities or by third parties, generally universities, with money from the government. And this is a recurring effort. It's not an ad hoc effort. It's something well established already. And certainly the governments could allocate those kind of funds to independent universities to survey over a number of years the trends in use of nicotine in a particular market, as well as the health outcomes. And in fact, it is very important to track the evolution of smoking-related diseases in environments where alternative nicotine products, such as nicotine pouches and vaping products, are present, compared to countries where those products are not present. And I can assure you, after 10, 20, 30 years, you could probably track a difference in health outcomes, in particular with respect to respiratory disease and cancers derived or resulting from smoking combustible cigarettes. But those kind of studies, because of their scope, because of the access that the researchers have to large population sets, need to be conducted with government sponsorship and commissioned by the government. Again, they should be conducted by independent, knowledgeable third parties. It also should be, they should be candidly reviewed by everybody, all stakeholders, because certainly we cannot trust that the same organization over and over again will get the right result. And the third most important thing is that the same questions be asked in every survey in subsequent years, because we've seen a phenomenon in the US where you change a little bit the questions you ask regarding, for instance, youth vaping or smoking preferences, and then all of a sudden you're not comparing apples to apples from this year to next year, and it almost looks like there is a new and more concerning trend when all in fact happens, you changed the questions on the survey. Therefore, it's very important to, again, have a consistent approach over an extensive period of time. And I do believe that some trends will be emerging, and that science could be used, and those type of surveys could be used to inform regulatory decisions in the future.
Naveed?
Yeah, look, I agree with Patricia and Hamid. When you were posing the question and I was listening to you talk, Hamid, what was sort of ringing in my mind is, when you think about research, you think about what is the evidence that we need in order to get people, when I say people, I mean regulators, public health, doctors, society, comfortable with any new product, regardless whether it be a nicotine product or not, is essentially you look for three standards. You look for safety, you look for efficacy, you look for epidemiology, right? There have been hundreds, if not thousands, of papers and data points published to demonstrate that the safety of e-cigarettes compared to combustible cigarettes, e-cigarettes are way, way, way better. 95% as per the Public Health England report. Efficacy is about, well, when people use the product, are they getting sufficient satisfaction from the product so that they can step away, off-ramp from combustible cigarettes and on-ramp onto these products? We've seen, millions of people around the world switch successfully from smoking to these products. What's now left is the question of epidemiology. What we don't know, what we haven't ascertained as of yet, is the long-term effects of using products like e-cigarettes. And that, is ultimately when we can answer the question of what happens when 20 or 30 years of these products being used. Does it result in a reduction in morbidity and mortality associated with smoking cigarettes? If we see that, that is the ultimate proof that any public health body would want to see. Now, we've seen that in Sweden. We've seen that with snus, with oral nicotine pouches, which have been used in Sweden for 120, 130 years. We've seen safety, we've seen efficacy, and now we've seen epidemiology. And even though we're at the World Vape Show, we shouldn't forget about the other products that are out there which can help people stop smoking. And for me, nicotine pouches offer the most substantial data set that any public health body would need to see in order to convince them that, these products need to be offered to smokers, and these products need to be treated differently to essentially attract smokers into the category.
Interesting.
Can I just comment, please? Yeah. Regarding, again, back to nicotine, it's not an issue with nicotine. I agree with what you are saying, but nicotine for children is a big issue.
Of course, yes.
So there is a safety issue in here. The most important we agree, all of us, that tobacco is harmful for human health and is triggering cancer, etc. But till now, we don't have this statement. We don't have a statement that vape is cancerogenic or not cancerogenic. We need research. We need to know when heating e-liquid, which products are coming out.
Well, we know there's a 95% reduction.
No, but how do we know? Any proof?
Oh, absolutely.
No. Byproducts? Did we add that? Can you identify all byproducts which come out from heating e-liquid?
Of course.
Can we?
Yeah, and I have to comment on that, but I'll leave it to the experts.
Yes.
You said tobacco is the main issue, while tobacco in its normal form is a plant,
Yes.
like other plants. Just to frame the question here, from my point of view, and I'll leave it to the experts, that the question is, combustion is when you burn a cigarette and generate the byproducts that you're talking about,
Yeah.
and this is where we start to generate the harmful and potentially harmful chemicals. It's a very valid point to differentiate between the use of tobacco and the use of burnt tobacco. But I'll leave it to you. I don't want to be the part giving the opinion. But if you have a comment on that, that's very important to understand the differentiation.
Yeah, I sort of tend to disagree actually on the matter of harm of vaping products, not because I'm trying to say they're not harmful or they have a certain profile. Certainly depends on what you put in the liquid. But the most important thing is to understand that there has been extensive research actually for the last 14 years on these products, on vaping products. Again, not all vaping products are the same, and whatever research has been conducted was conducted on a particular brand, on a particular product formulation, which is why we need some form of oversight of ingredients and quality testing and so on. However, with respect to carcinogenicity of nicotine, even the Food and Drug Administration leadership has acknowledged that, in fact, it's not the nicotine that causes cancer. And I do not believe that the discussion should be around nicotine. The discussion should be really about harmful constituents and how to ensure that the products that are placed on the market do not contain ingredients which, when heated, expose humans to more harm, not than cigarettes, but then perhaps, we as a society can accept. I do recall, however, and I'm sure my memory doesn't help me, a study that compared a particular, the profile of vape from a particular product to ambient air and didn't find significant differences. But that's an older study, and again, I cannot quite remember what year it was and who wrote it. However, there are extensive literature reviews that I strongly suggest we all participate in educating not only governments but the industry on. And the best forum for those are, of course, scientific conferences, but also publications. I think to this day, I think there is only one or two people who dedicate their time to aggregating the science. One is Professor Konstantinos Farsalinos, and the other one is Mr. Clive Bates. And they both dedicate their life to not only researching, but aggregating and explaining the science behind the various alternative nicotine products.
Fantastic. Again, I just want to comment. I agree with what you are saying, but what I'm trying to say, we don't have clear studies about vaping. We don't have. I mean, we have about nicotine, but do we have about flavors mixed with nicotine? We don't have. We don't know what are the byproducts coming from flavors. What are the flavors' origins? What happens when we have pharmaceutical grades or food grades together? So we need science. We need more science to be able to justify our comments. I'm not against vape. I'm not with vape. I am with science. So I'm just saying.
It's a scientific session, but on that point, because the debate is very important to understand. So I'd like to hear Naveed's comment because he's coming from the research background. What are the studies today that is discussing the comparison in compounds, byproducts between vaping products and combustible cigarettes? And the other important question, has these studies included flavorings?
There's plenty of studies out there that have been published which have looked at the products of heating e-liquid in a vapor device, looking for HPHCs, well, not only HPHCs, but using techniques as non-targeted analysis to identify other byproducts that have been produced as a result of heating the tobacco, of heating the e-liquid with and without flavorings. In fact, you know, coming back to my flag waving, you know, for the UK, if you want to make an application in the UK for a nicotine product as a medicinal product, one thing you've got to demonstrate is what are the byproducts of heating the liquid with flavorings, and you do that through a non-targeted analysis. So these studies have been done. They've been done for many years. There's a lot of data in the literature to show that actually, even if you consider the byproducts that are being produced, the toxicological burden of the vapor from an e-cigarette is highly, substantially, significantly lower than what it is for combusted tobacco. And that's an important point, Mo, that you brought up. Tobacco is not harmful. If you use tobacco, well, yeah, tobacco is not harmful, it's a plant. If you use tobacco in
Combustion.
If you use tobacco in a pouch, as in snus, the harm is significantly lower than a cigarette. If you use tobacco in a product like IQOS, which heats the tobacco instead of burning it, the levels of HPHCs are 90–95% reduced as well. So the issue really is coming down to the combustion of tobacco.
Okay. Because we don't have much time, I want to close differently this time, but asking the audience by the raise of hands, if somebody else is still smoking at the moment combustible cigarettes. Cigarettes. Anybody smoking cigarettes will not report you, just you can say it. Nobody. How many of you used to smoke cigarettes and today uses a different method of alternative delivery? How many of you today is a quitter and does not use any form of nicotine and used to be a smoker, but shifted because he used an alternative nicotine delivery solution? But today, they are not nicotine dependent. So today, I quit smoking for 3 years today. I used to smoke 2 packs a day. Then I used heated tobacco products, then vapes, and then I quit it. And this is my 3rd year. So today, in such an audience, which is not representative, I know, but at least it gives hope. People who used to go out for a smoke, people who used to wake up, the smokers know what I mean, when they wake up for the smell, and when they wake up for losing their beloved ones, I think they would take the 95% and run with it. I know it's not 100%. Yesterday, the moderator was saying, maybe we will not reach a 100% safe nicotine delivery solution. And I said, why not? Maybe we will be conclusive about it. But at the same time, it is a clear-cut answer. These products are not risk-free. Definitely better than cigarettes, combusted cigarettes. Because definitely you're not chewing cigarette. You are burning them out, inhaling 7,000 compounds that has not been there, like tar, carbon monoxide, and other many things. Okay, does vape generate part of these HPHCs? Yes, but there is a reduction, a big reduction of these amounts compared to cigarettes. To close down, I know I shouldn't have been opinionating my opinion, but I cannot help it. What I want to say is that we have moved a long way from the first introduction of the first e-cigarette. Today, research, labs, and experts are bringing in studies that are based on product development. I think we need more science, 100%. We need more regulatory and regulations and legal to make sure that we protect the vulnerable groups, 100%. But do we keep smokers waiting? I said yesterday, smokers today does not have a choice. He can try to quit or die trying, literally. So I'll give everybody a minute if you want to close down. Just a quick commentary. Dr. Hamid wants more than a minute. I'm sorry, we cannot.
No, no.
But I'll give a minute to everyone. I'll start from Naveed if you have to wrap up within a minute.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Mo. I think you cannot not offer smokers a product that is 95% less harmful than combustible cigarettes. It's unethical not to. Even if it was 50% of the harm, you still have to offer that to smokers so they have the option to do less damage to themselves. I think the biggest threat to the industry as we move forward is the potential of kids beginning to use the product more and more. And I think as responsible players in the market, we have to ensure that the right information is going out to smokers, telling them that they need to switch from combustible cigarettes, but at the same time, safeguards are put in place to ensure that kids are not being attracted into the category.
First, thank you for the opportunity, especially for you. And what I want to stress out is life is going digital. So one day vape would replace cigarettes. I assure you, 100%, because we are going digital. Our role as conformity bodies, as regulatory, as labs, is to make sure that vapes are safe with what they contain, whether it's from a chemical origin, from fruit origin, whatever. So as we stressed out, we need to find out how we can make it safer, how we can do a lot of studies, how we can work together with governments, with manufacturers to make vape better options for smokers. Thank you.
And thank you. First of all, compliments again on a great, great vape show. The countries around the Middle East and GCC have a great opportunity to recognize that due to the high incidence of smoking in this area, there is also a lot of room for improvement, and they can get it right probably much more than countries where vaping and nicotine pouches were established earlier, simply because I do believe they also have the resources, as they've demonstrated by investing in technology hubs here in the Middle East and by investing in amazing real estate development. They do have the understanding of this opportunity. So therefore, my urge is that they invest in research, that they create dedicated centers to research the benefits of moving down on the continuum of risk towards reduced risk alternatives, such as nicotine pouches and vaping products. And that research is a great priority. And also, every regulatory moves should be very thoughtful and, again, based on not on gut feelings or instinct or fear-mongering, but on actual scientific data.
Thank you. I would like to thank the panelists for their contribution. I think this session shows the importance of science and scientific bodies and the help that they can give the governments in order to present scientific substantiation is important. I'd like to end like I end always. Smokers are not sinners. Smokers are patients, addicts that needs to be provided with a viable, better alternative. This only can happen by having scientific regulation, media, and the health community, and the medical community, and the manufacturers working hand in hand to provide the best products, better alternatives, and the safest options until we reach the point where everybody can quit nicotine altogether. Thank you so much again.